The idea with making a chalice for you guys is to introduce you to, maybe a little bit more of a sophisticated form since you guys are intermediates. Being the first day you're back in class on the wheels, I would hope that you're not focusing specifically on like what you're keeping, like I mentioned before, but just sort of getting back in tune with the clay. The reason I want to share this idea about chalices with you is because there's a lot of the fundamental skills you need in making pots blended into this form. And also, is a really current and fresh idea that I'm working with right now. I used to think more about, the reason I like these one-piece chalices is because of the flow, the transition between the stem and the cup section, and how I like how it's all in one piece. It just has like a more natural flow to it. But there's always something missing with this form. I didn't feel like it was quite resolved. I couldn't really put my finger on it until I changed up my technique in faceting, because these stems are always faceted, at least for me. It has to do with using an undercut with the wire as I cut it. But I think you'll see it makes a big difference in the finished quality. When you're making a cylinder for a chalice, I just throw it a normal thinness, not super thin or not extra thick, just because I'm faceting it. Because the thing is, it thickens up when you're collaring the base, which I'll show you here in a second. So I might do one more pull just to get it up into a relatively even, fairly thin, normal cylinder. And then there I'll stop with trying to get height out of it and start focusing on collaring. So like in the beginning when I talked about, there's a kind of a sequence to the making of any form, which is why working in series helps, because you get more and more familiar with that sequence and it gets more and more dialed in as you go. So here I'll wet the whole outside, using the sponge on my center finger to kind of pre-wet the clay. And notice I'm using my thumb and forefingers to kind of like vertically apply pressure to the piece. So right from the very start, I'm shaping using collaring rather than just my fingertips and pulls. So I'll draw in. I'm really keeping an eye on the inside of this piece. I found that if I get it to about the size of a dime-sized opening on the inside, I'm about where I need to be. So one more collar, not so much at the base, but in the stem section here, just, yeah. A little bit tighter, maybe one more. And so once I've gotten to that dime-sized opening, I'll definitely look on the outside, see if the proportions look good. They do. And then now, I always, emphasize undercutting on pieces. It just gives a finishing touch to everything you make. But in this case, I can kind of finish off the base, take away a little bit of extra clay, remove it, and use that clay as the clay I use to plug that dime-size opening between the cup and the stem, right? So I'll dry it off a little bit, take a little off. Make a little marble of clay here. And I just flatten it and use my center finger to bite into it. The fingernail bites into it. I'll set it down and then support it on the outside and then just smooth that piece of clay. So now I have an airlock in the base. It's much more stable. And I can do some final collaring at the base, and then I can work on finishing up that cup. So I'll just kind of make sure it's a nice smooth transition from stem to cup, right? Getting that profile right. And then I can treat this like a piece in and of itself. It's almost like a little tea bowl here up on top. So I'll draw the clay up and give it a little bit more volume. In this case, I'm going to come into a couple inches before the lip and draw it more straight up. So make a little transition in the body there. And I've also found that going to a little bit more of an extreme sweep with this belly tends to work with the overall form, especially when I'm fastening the base. So be generous with that belly curve. I might go once more just to get it where I want it. Getting a little bit more volume in. And kind of a straight shot here, slightly tapered. Giving the lip a little bit of care. I personally like to have a lip that slightly tapers in at the top, as beveled on the lip. And here I can come in and continue that thrown line right around just finish it off there. It's a really subtle transition. Okay, so we've got our basic form, and we come into the fun part, which is the faceting. I tend to like using a very thin wire. There's different gauge wires here, because that gives me a really precise cut, especially with what I'm doing with the floor. And here's the thing, I'm going to be faceting on the sides. You're familiar with that, but when I get to the bottom, I want to curl back in and kind of do my undercut. And when I'm applying this wire tool, I want it to be coming in right in line with the line that's in the cup, and just kind of blend into the side. And here I'll just undercut it a little bit with that wire. You'll see what I mean as it comes around. So in this case, I'm going to do a 6-sided one. So I'm going to come in from this side, the opposite side, and then take 2 more cuts in between there. Beveling it. I'm just so happy with the finish in the foot with this little undercut that's in the facet itself. So there's a finished faceted chalice, and those are the steps that go into doing it. So collaring comes in handy. Faceting's a way to bring it kind of to the next level. You're thinking about transitions within the form, the lip, the foot, and everything that goes on in between. Everything you guys make, you're accountable for what's going on from start to finish. Those are some of the techniques that might, be of interest to you this next couple weeks as you warm up and start getting used to working on the wheel again.